Yeah. Assembly Bill 367. I will now open the hearing on AB 367. Thank you, Chair Yeager. Please proceed when you are ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. My name is Steve Yeager. I represent Assembly District 9 in Southwest Las Vegas. It is my honor to present Assembly Bill 367 to you this afternoon. I would like to tell you about the genesis of this bill and then tell you what the bill does before turning it over to the two sitting next to me at the table for additional remarks. Just by way of introduction, with me to my left is Dona Dmitrovic, I think I got that right, great, Executive Director of Foundation for Recovery, and to my right here is Trey Delap, Director of Group 6 Partners, LLC. I had the privilege of being voted Chair of the Southern Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board in the last interim. As those of you who were here last session will remember, Assembly Bill 366 of the 2017 session, sponsored by our former colleague, Assemblyman Nelson Araujo, created 4 regional behavioral health boards. Each board received 1 bill draft request. The Southern Board debated many ideas and talked about what idea to advance to this session of the legislature. The bill in front of you today, Assembly Bill 367, was one of the ideas that was brought forward at our board meetings, and the idea was to update the language in Nevada Revised Statute to remove stigmatizing language and to use terminology that more accurately reflects the fact that addictive disorders are really behavioral health issues. Ultimately, this idea was not the one chosen by our Southern Board, but it was important enough to me that I chose to use one of my personal bills to advance this idea to this session of the legislature. So that's where Assembly Bill 367 came from. Now to the bill itself. Thankfully, it's really not too complicated in terms of bills that we see. It essentially says that the Legislative Counsel Bureau should update the language of our statutes. It specifies the preferred terminology and also specifies the terminology that is no longer preferred. The terminology itself will be updated in the next codification of the Nevada Revised Statutes, which will happen after the session, as it always does. All existing language will be updated, as well as language from any bills that we pass this session of the legislature. Going forward, only the preferred terminology would be used. So that's the bill. With your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to hand it over to either Ms. Dmitrovic or Mr. Delap to provide additional testimony and then open it up for any questions.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. I'd like to take this time to thank Assemblyman Yeager for his leadership on this important piece of legislation and offer these comments in support of AB 367. As he said, I am representing Foundation for Recovery. We are a recovery community organization based in Las Vegas, but we are statewide, that provides peer recovery support services to those that have substance use disorders. We also provide advocacy and education around the power of recovery. I'm also representing the Recovery Advocacy Project, which is based in Las Vegas, that looks at the policy issues that are relevant to the recovering community. As a woman in long-term recovery, I have over 33 years of continuous recovery, and I've been working in the field for 30 years. I've learned how important words are when working with our most vulnerable populations. FFR and RAP wholeheartedly support replacing the stigmatizing language and replacing terms that reflect people with substance use disorders. Describing patients as having a substance use disorder demonstrates that their illness does not define them, just as we should no longer call a person with schizophrenia a schizophrenic. Words have been shown by researchers to negatively influence attitudes toward people in recovery and those that are using substances, which suggests that our health condition is a moral, social, or criminal issue. So I asked you just to take a second and think about, when you hear the term addict or alcoholic, what do you see in your mind? Now think about the term a person, a afflicted with an addictive disorder, does that mental image differ in your mind between the person labeled as an alcoholic or a person with an addictive disorder? Over the years, we have seen this also impact access to health care. If people don't access health care, our outcomes are much lower, and we know that addiction costs our society billions of dollars. FFR and RAP are so appreciative of the leadership and support of this bill to show, especially during the evidence of all of the opioid epidemic and the public health crisis that we see across this country. It's a first step to encourage person-first language, and the bill will also encourage others in the field to look at the way they represent people and those that are seeking treatment. As with other health conditions, person-first language has been widely adopted by professional associations and scientific journals to replace negative terms that label people. I think that we'll find that more people will seek treatment or help for their addictive disorder if the shame, stigma, and discriminatory practices are gone, and we are identifying folks with having a health condition. I know with many of the individuals that we work with, and even myself when I got into recovery, it was much easier for me to ask for help when I understood that I had a health condition and I was just not a bad person. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Trey Delap. I'm the Director of Group 6 Partners. Thank you for hearing AB 367 today. One of our objectives this session is to support initiatives removing barriers to recovery from addiction for all Nevadans and their families. Over the past 5 years, I've been working on public health policy and political issues addressing the addiction epidemic currently being experienced in Nevada and throughout our country. During this time, we've learned a number of things. Most importantly, and relevant to the legislation before you, is the negative impact of stigma. Words matter. Words like junkie, degenerate, drug addict, drunk, abuser, meth head, convict, and the like are harsh and condemning. My colleague Dona aptly reviewed the extensive research on the effect of language and stigma and addiction recovery. We understand that we do not have power over how people use words to describe themselves or others, but we, represented through you, do have the power to eliminate this presumption in laws we live by. For many people with addictions or affected by them, the law currently sustains negative stigma by focusing on the problems people have rather than the people who have problems. AB 367 will flip this focus. Since the Just Say No campaign of the 80s, which suggested that addictive behavior was a moral choice and people with addictions were weak, punishment would set them straight. The failure of this approach was worsened by aggressive criminal penalties, resulting in an exploding prison population, creating a culture or class of people whose legitimate addictive disorders were first, not addressed, and secondly, their ability to re-enter society is severely hindered by the criminal records branded upon them. We've learned that addiction is a progressive, complex, and chronic disorder, one that cannot be punished away. Rather, recovery can be attained and sustained by someone given the opportunity, especially when they have contact with a public institution, like the criminal justice system or a public health provider. There have been some affirming and progressive remedies to the consequences often incurred by people with addictions. For example, in the last session, record-stealing wait times have been halved, voting rights have been restored automatically, the box has been banned on public employers. These acts are tremendously empowering for those disenfranchised and condemned by the law. The direction the state is going is good, and we can continue this forward progress by personifying addiction and recovery, by updating our laws through this bill. There is notable precedent for this method of updating statutory language. In the original draft of the Nevada Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, denied the right to vote to a person who was, quote, an idiot or insane. In the 2004 general election, Question 7, originating from Assembly Joint Resolution 3, was approved, and this language was fixed. A decade later, in 2013, Senate Bill 338 successfully replaced the words mental retardation throughout NRS with intellectual disability. Last session, SB 27 updated the definition of mental illness, which was qualified in statute by reference to an outdated diagnostic manual. This change ensured ongoing access to federal funding and the ability of the state to provide evidence-based treatment and recovery support through its public programs. Donna covered the key points of research on language, and those references are included in my exhibit. I'd like to illustrate an example of how this bill may affect language in NRS. For example, NRS 458290 contains a statutory definition for drug addict. For context, the statute deals with civil commitment of addicts. When a judge is satisfied that someone is a drug addict, per statute, they may be sentenced to a program for treatment. Now, for clarity, it is not the intent of this bill to deprive anyone of any public assistance in treating an addictive disorder. The powers outlined in Chapter 458 and others should not be infringed, except that instead of being a statutory drug addict, they would be referred to as a person with a substance use disorder or person with addictive disorder. This person first language better achieves the aim of the court in NRS 458 and others by helping the person with the problem. In conclusion, it is our hope that passing AB 367 will orient Nevada law away from focusing on problems people have towards serving people who have problems and being restored to their liberties, their families, and the benefit of all Nevada communities. I'd like to personally thank Assemblyman Yeager for his leadership as the chair of the Southern Nevada Regional Behavioral Health Policy Advisory Board, for offering a personal BDR for this piece of legislation, and his professional and personal commitment to helping people raise themselves with little support from their state. Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge support of this bill, and I stand ready for any questions.
Thank you for bringing this bill forward and for sharing your personal story as well. Does the committee have any questions? Okay, Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, the fact that this is being brought forward, we know the reality as we have grown and evolved as a society. We've learned that whether it's color or race, gender, profession, ability, religion, that of the utmost respect is to refer to people as they desire to be referred to. And I think that that's just like the bottom level of respect that we can give. I also am a big believer in what we say is what we become. And so I understand even personally how those words and identifications, what those can mean. So I really appreciate this. And let's be honest, there's not one of us humans that have not been affected by addiction in some way, whether it's a family member, ourselves, but it is something that as humans we deal with. My question is what other states or have moved to this type of respectful language? Do we have some examples, or are we the first? What's happening?
I'm actually going to refer that to Donna because she's from another state and she's developed these programs all over the place. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Trady Lap for the record. I'd like to refer my colleague to try to answer that question.
Yes, for the record, my name's Dona Dmitrovic. I'm actually from the Northeast and been working in the field for a long time, and there has been other legislation, I believe in Minnesota and Pennsylvania to change the terms. I will say, though, at the federal level, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think, for us to look at this as a state, I think we can also be a model for others. Thank you.
Follow up? And so the language that's being suggested here would be similar to the same language in those states?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblyman McCurdy.
Just a comment, Madam Chair, but I'm really glad that we're bringing this forward. I mean, I just am so happy about the amount of progress that we're making on many fronts as it relates to reform. And, having a family member who suffers from addiction and, having lived through that, I'm just really glad that this is, now being changed. So thank you, Chairman, and I really appreciate this.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we will open it up to testimony in support. If you are here in support in Carson City or in Las Vegas, please approach and fill the seats. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. John Piro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. As a person who works in a trade where words are all of my profession, I think we all know that words have the power to uplift, or they can create a stigma and an impression that a person is disposable. As you all know, sometimes the pen is mightier than the sword. And in this case, I'm going to urge you guys to use the power of the pen and remove this stigma from our statutes by passing this bill. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Kendra Birchie with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. As you all know from working in the legislature now and with working on your own bills, the words that you're using in your bills have such importance. Every comma, every semicolon, everything really will change and shape the way that your bill will then be enacted and how, as the attorneys, we're going to use that going forward. And the same goes for the people who are affected by those bills. And that's why this bill is extremely important, because it does help uplift the community members. As public defenders, for those who were in the judiciary, you heard us describe how our office uses a holistic approach to defense, where we really try to get to the root of the problem of the individuals and the clients that we see to help fix them. And we believe that that goes with even labeling to help ensure that they don't continue in the path that they are and going and use that to become better citizens and become more productive members. We believe that this will help support that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in Carson City or in Las Vegas who wishes to give testimony in support? Okay, seeing none, we will move to testimony in opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City or in Las Vegas who wishes to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none, we will move to testimony in neutral. Is there anyone in Carson City or in Las Vegas who wishes to testify in neutral? Seeing none, we will invite the bill sponsor back up to give any final remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Steve Yeager. I think Mr. Piro put it really, really well that, people are people and we shouldn't throw anyone away. We shouldn't give up on people who need help. A lot of people in our state need help, a lot of people in the country, and I think this is a reflection that we as a society are trying to view these issues for what they are, which are behavioral health issues. Just because you deal with these doesn't make you a bad person, and I think this is a good first step for the state of Nevada to send that message loud and clear. So thank you so much for hearing the bill, and I urge your support.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 367. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have ACR 7. I will open the hearing on ACR 7 and have the bill sponsor start when he is ready.